Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Melanie Curtis. Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with you. We're here to create conscious connections, to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust, trusting the entire journey. Across the internet family, we are trustthejourney.today. That's our website, our Instagram, all the channels. Our Patreon community, the Trust the Journey family, is absolutely how we keep the show going and growing. The family is a private Facebook group where we expand conversations directly with anyone seeking community, seeking connection, seeking support for their own healing journeys too. So we hold that space very deeply, very safely, full non-judgment and encouragement for people looking to be vulnerable and support each other in our challenges and our wins. So we welcome you there. You're always welcome to join that. We host live integration coaching circles also once a month. So for those that join the Patreon at the $25 level, you get all of those included as well. So yeah, thank you to everyone who already is in the family, who supports us. Truly, it really means the world to us, and it very practically makes a difference as well. So to join, go to trustthejourney.today and click the orange Patreon button. If you would like a cost-free way of supporting the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, Instagram, or leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you like the show, all of that stuff helps. Share an episode with someone directly that you think it could help. All that stuff makes a difference. To connect with Jay or me individually, you can go to our websites, jasonmaledzki.com or melaniecurtis.com. Right on. Okay, today, fam, I am thrilled to welcome Jennifer Cassetta. Jennifer is a TEDx and keynote speaker, high performance coach, and author of The Art of Badassery, Unleash Your Mojo with the Wisdom of the Dojo. Equipped with her 3rd degree black belt in Hapkido, master's degree in nutrition, and various wellbeing certifications, she spent the last 2 decades coaching people to feel strong, safe, and powerful from the streets to the boardroom. With clients that include Apple, American Airlines, Nike, and Visa, Jennifer has rocked hundreds of stages across the country with her knockout combination of engaging content and contagious enthusiasm. I feel that. Her skills have been featured on the Today Show, Good Morning America, Rachael Ray, The Doctors, as well as countless publications. Watch her TEDx talk, barefoot of course, as she walks us through her framework for living a life of utter badassery. And now today, we're lucky enough to get her wisdom here. Jen, welcome.
Thank you, Melanie. Hi, everyone.
Yes, so happy to have you here. You know, it's funny, the way I start these interviews, I like to really ground us in the present and ask people like, how you doing? Like, how are you doing today, right now? Like, what's alive for you?
Well, just listening to your voice, first of all, you have a very grounding voice. I feel all of a sudden much more calm, much more present. And what kept coming up for me in your introduction was trust, the word trust, and how, like, even internally, I felt this, oh my God, it's been so hard for me to really trust the universe, to trust the journey, the process, all of it. And I feel like I'm finally getting to a place where I am more able to do that. So that's what came up for me.
Oh, I love that. It's always, I think it's all a process, right? For sure. And I'm curious also, I definitely want to get into, and this is just sort of a teaser for people listening, definitely I'm going to want to hear your 9/11 story. But before we get to that, what is your origin story? Where are you from? Where did you come from? What kind of kid were you? That type. I'm curious about that.
That's funny because my origin story in my mind starts at the 9/11 story, but by that time I was already 22 years old. I've never really talked about my childhood.
It's just curious because, you're such a badass, like a legitimate badass. And you've done so many things. And I love hearing where people, like, what kind of kid people were, because it grounds us. And, this girl who did all this amazing shit was also a kid. And also was just like, I don't know, doing whatever you did in school, or I don't know, just give us a sense of that.
Yeah. I grew up in a town called Mahopac, New York, which is like an hour and 10 minutes north of the city. And my whole dream in life as a kid was to move to the city. That was it. I didn't care what I wanted to do. I didn't, well, actually, I wanted to be either a waitress or a veterinarian when I grew up. And I was just I was like nice. I was, I hope. Now that I think about it, I'm like,
you're like, oh, dang. Was I?
Yeah.
Uh-oh, self-reflection. Uh-oh.
Right. You know, gymnastics, that was my thing. In high school, I did the whole cheerleader thing, which I find like so bizarre nowadays looking back. Like, let's go cheer for a bunch of boys playing football. Like, in tight sweaters and short skirts. Like, it makes zero sense to the person that I am today, but
yeah,
that's what I was doing. I would say I attribute my badassery to my parents. My dad is first generation Italian and, you know, grew up in the Bronx, mom from Queens. And my mom was always a very independent, spirited woman. And my dad was an NYPD detective. So he was just tough. Yet in his early 50s is when he started his martial arts journey. So that shifted things. And also he was one of those people in the 70s and 80s listening to self-help tapes and books. So I grew up listening to Tony Robbins in the car.
Amazing.
He was a part of my psyche. If I wasn't maybe consciously taking it in, but he's in the background. There's bookshelves filled of self-help books that my dad devoured. And it wasn't until I was in early adulthood where I took that leap, and him and I would bond so much over that kind of work.
Very cool. And very interesting that he had experience in martial arts, because that's always something I'm like, I was always wondering that about you. Is it like, how did you get into martial arts? You know, like the dojo is such a big part of your story. And, you know, that was curious. Is that why you started to do martial arts yourself?
I mean, I'm sure it is. Again, I was probably 22 years old when I first decided that I was going to try a class. So I was living in New York, and I just remember being on the subway one day thinking, I really want to try some martial arts. And it all happened so magically that my dad, and anyone who's familiar with New York can understand this, was training up in White Plains. So it's like at least a half hour away, with this grandmaster in Taekwondo. And when I had said, you know, I want to try this, I spoke to Grandmaster Kim, and he gave me one name of a school to check out. He said, you go see Master Herbert. And the day before, he didn't know where I lived or worked in Manhattan. The day before, I had wandered into this same exact studio because it was next door to my office.
Oh my God.
Literally next door, 596 Broadway, 598 Broadway. Like, there's no words. So I was just like, here, take my money, sign me up.
Yeah,
that was it.
Totally. Oh my gosh. I love stories like that where you're like, the universe is clearly going, here you go. This is something I'm serving up for you. Will you take what's on this platter or not? Not that you have to, but it's nice. Right. It's I feel like it's a story. It's a really great small little anecdote around that recognition of going, something maybe is afoot here that I can't fully understand, but I'm going to choose to trust it and see where it takes me. Beautiful.
Completely. And again, in my 22-year-old mind, none of that really, I didn't think more than just, okay, you know? And people ask me, why did you choose Hapkido? I'm like, I didn't. It chose me. Like, that's the story. So I knew nothing about it. And I jumped right in, and my first class, I was hooked.
Wow.
It just felt so good.
That's totally me in skydiving. I was afraid. It was in my family, the whole thing. And literally when I jumped, I was one and done. Like, changed. It immediately hooked. And then the rest of my story is sort of proverbially history. But that passion was born pretty immediately upon the first recognition of that activity, of that freedom. But
wow.
Yeah, I know. It's fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was in your family either.
Well, my dad's a pilot, and we had a grass strip behind my house, and he and his best friend basically started a drop zone at my house. And so exactly. He wasn't a skydiver. He was an aviation person. I grew up with airplanes and flying and stuff like that. But my dad's best friend was a skydiver, and they're like, "Oh, let's just open skydiving center at our house." Like, they're totally like that old school, dudes type of a vibe. But it was certainly a part of what shaped me as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I do want to go to your 9/11 story, because I feel like a lot of people, I mean, not everyone that's alive currently has a 9/11 story, obviously, but a large chunk of who's alive now in the world has one. And I mean, I guess tell us that story. Take us there.
I will. And I just wanted to point out also that 3 books that I know of this year came out with, were with women authors that shared their 9/11 story. Wow. And I thought that was so interesting. One was me, obviously. But,
right. One happened to be me.
But also Janie Fiore Higgins.
Yep.
Her book, Bully Market, she had a story there. And Bozoma St. John, her book is called The Urgent Life.
Amazing.
And I was so surprised. Not surprised, but I thought maybe this is like the time where all of us who experienced it are now finally starting to share our story. Because I wasn't able to for a long time.
Understandable.
And mostly because of survivor's guilt. Why should I take up space or story time when so many people suffered so much worse?
Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge that, and anyone listening out there who has suffered much worse, that it's a awful time in our history and life, and I'm here now to share mine, and I hope that opens up some space for other people to share their story if they've been locking it away.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge quickly before you go into it, that's an understandable feeling. Like, me as a life coach, that's, I'm holding that safe space for people to explore things and look at places where they feel guilt of varying types, look at where they feel shame, or look at where they feel fear, all those things. Why I bring that up is it's so common for that to happen, where we'll judge what we are experiencing and diminish it, and thus hold ourselves back from healing it, right? So I love that you're now saying, I'm going to model sharing this and acknowledge that my experience may be vastly different than others, but it doesn't mean that my experience is invalid. Like, my experience for what it is valid, and it can be in service when told from a place of service, which is clearly how you show up in the world, and which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I love that, Jen, and I appreciate you sharing. So go on.
Thank you. So I was about a year into my martial arts training, and I was working as just had started in a few months prior to September for a couple who owned this beautiful loft space that were turning it into an event space. And, at the time I was really searching in my career. I didn't know what I wanted to do, like, when I grew up, even though like I had graduated already. But I loved the hospitality industry. I really did. So this kind of, again, came on my radar. I was asked by the couple to work for them. Yes. And the night before, on September 10th, they held their first event. September 11th, I was also my boss's birthday. Her name was Sam, and I went to the grocery store on 96th Street, bought some stuff. I was going to make her lunch, took the subway downtown, and there was a lot of starts and stops down as I got towards Wall Street, just slowing down, but that happens from time to time. So again, get upstairs, look up, and the towers had already been hit. I just saw black smoke billowing out, not understanding what in the world had just happened. looking around. I just remember people frantic, pointing, trying to use their cell phones, which were not working.
Yep.
So I realized I couldn't use my cell phone. So I went to my place of work, which was on Rector and the West Side Highway. So 3 blocks exactly south of the towers. And the doorman, I just remember, was like, again, frantic, but saying, I can't go upstairs. I can't go up there. And also my bosses, they weren't even home at the time. Thank goodness. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? He's like, well, the subways are just shut down. I'm like, okay, so I can't go home. He's like, you can use the phone in the lobby. So I pick up the phone. I call my mom because I figured she'd be worried. And within seconds of talking to her, she said, first of all, that I spoke to her in a childlike tone. I called her like mommy. And I said, Mommy, there's a hole in the World Trade Center, which is weird, right? So obviously trauma response had already set in.
Yep.
And within seconds, the first tower falls. So this is where it becomes blurry. I don't remember the noise, but I'm sure it's like embedded in my body somewhere.
Right.
I just remember swarms of people coming into the lobby, running now for safety. I have a vision in my head because the owner of that loft years later, only a few years ago, posted a picture of someone must have been blocks away, posted a picture of the plume of smoke overtaking the entire building at that moment.
Wow.
And I just think if I was a minute or two, just a few minutes earlier, this would have been a different story.
Yep.
Or no story at all. And anyway, I get pushed into a utility closet full of strangers. And I just remember being frozen. This woman came over to me. She saw me crying, and a police officer told me to shut up, basically, and stop crying about me. I know, I don't want to make him wrong about it, but I'm sure I was like making other people nervous. So this woman came over to me, put her hands on my shoulders, and said, what's your name? Which forced me to take a breath. I said, Jennifer. She said, Jennifer, I'm Nancy, and the two of us were going to get out of here today. I said, okay. So we were evacuated from that building. The cop wanted us out. I guess those were the orders, and everyone scattered.
Wow.
Nancy and I just headed south in the soot and ash, and we were just going from building to building, looking for somewhere we can go in. And at 1 Broadway, I think it is, or 100 Broadway, I don't remember, but it was a big lobby, loads of people, masks, water, TVs. We sat there. Second tower fell. So we were evacuated from there again. So again, all these people just scatter into the street. And that's when I had the idea to take Nancy to the dojo, to the martial arts school that I had been training at. And it was in Soho. So it was just a walk. So we went east and up and walked in there, looking like zombies, I'm sure. There were 2 other women that I trained with at the time. They were like more instructor-like for me, Holly and Lena. And they, came in, they took care of us. They gave us water, and I took a shower, and Nancy eventually headed home to her family. I don't even remember how she was getting there.
Yeah.
But that, to me, again, this is like the origin story of the next phase of my life. My career changed everything from that moment because I had this feeling of safety.
Yeah.
And that's all I wanted to do in the weeks and months that followed. So obviously, later on that day, I got up to my sister's house on 55th Street, and I have zero recollection of how I got there.
Wow.
I must have walked. There was no other way. And imagine walking like 55 blocks and not having a memory of it. Zero.
Yeah.
I try, and it's gone.
Wow.
So that's weird.
Yeah. I mean, trauma is this a big thing, a big part of what we talk about on Trust the Journey is this notion of healing. Is healing. And so amazing that even amidst your trauma, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's this equally powerful, I am now in this dojo, this place where I feel safe, this community where I feel safe, in the presence of people where I feel safe. And the juxtaposition of that to the trauma on the day seems like this very powerful, interesting yin yang of what occurred that day. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I never get into all this detail, but I went to my friend's house who was living in Soho at the time. I remember smoking a cigarette because I was like,
Wow.
back then, like, I don't know. I was a smoker in like college.
Yeah.
Again, it's so not me today,
Yeah.
but I remember smoking a big cigarette and just like sitting on the couch in shock. And then I guess somehow I made it to my sister's house. I have no idea how.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
it's fascinating. I was also in New York on 9/11, and I lived 24th between 2nd and 3rd, and I literally never was below 14th Street. Like I just never went downtown. It was never a thing. Weirdly enough, on September 10th, I had jury duty. And so I had to go downtown to the place, and on my lunch break, I walked over to the Twin Towers, and I was like looking up at them, and I'm not joking, Jen, I was never down there. And then I had like a fun dinner planned with one of my friends in Brooklyn that night, and the trains happened to be running on like the bridge versus underground, and I remember coming home back to my apartment in Manhattan that night, sitting by the window and looking out at the Twin Towers, and just that visual is burned in my memory forever. That those towers on September 10th, like I will never forget it, and nor will I forget the visual of looking up on my lunch hour, even though I didn't have any idea at those moments that would be so significant. Very interesting, that stuff.
Yes. There's so many stories like that I've heard over the years.
Yeah. I mean, same thing. You mentioned like, God, what could have been different? So on September 11th, I had jury duty. I was selected for a case. And the only reason I wasn't there was because the case I got assigned to started at 11.
Oh my God.
Unfucking believable, right? So I was in my apartment seeing it on television and being like, holy, like, just like, the thing. I was in my apartment and I saw it on TV with my roommate, and we had the whole thing. And then, of course, I went outside. You never will forget that smell and just like the energy of the city. It's an interesting unifying feeling in a trauma experience too. Like I felt that, where I'm like, whoa, we're in this together. Even though New York can feel so isolating amidst millions of people, it didn't then.
No. In the weeks and months after, it felt very unified, actually. And I just remember all the posters of people, like looking for their family members. It was just so sad. And just sad. And I just remember like walking around, you just wanted to like hug people. You just want to like look them in the eyes. I wish we could have that in the way without, without the terrible thing happening.
Exactly. I think that's what, if I think about that, it invites us into those more human qualities of ourselves. It invites us to reflect on our automatic ways of being. It invites us into change. And so back to your story, you say it was a stake in the ground. So what changed? So tell us more than what did you do after this life-changing event?
Yeah. So I went, I remember going back up to my parents for a few days. I just couldn't, but I also had to pay the bills. So my brother owned a nightclub at the time. So I was bartending, and like 3 days later, I'm like, are people really going to go to the club? And sure enough, they sure did. They were there. I was bartending to, and so I came back to the city, obviously, in a couple of days, and I was out of a job, obviously, during the day. So all I wanted to do was go to the dojo. So I would go get on those mats. It just, I could feel my feet sinking into these rubbery mats. I don't know if anyone knows what they're like, but it's like wrestling mats if you had those in high school, and you like sink in them and they're dense, and it was just a very grounding experience. Again, I didn't have the words. I can only know this looking back, right? at the time, I didn't realize that I was going there to heal this serious PTSD that I was facing. Because at home, I remember, the sound of garbage trucks or a low-flying plane or fireworks on July 4th. Oh my God, I would be like jumping out of my skin. But when I was there, I just felt strong in my body, my mind and spirit. And I can't, the timeline is a little fuzzy, but eventually I finally said, like, well, what can I do to earn a living that also keeps me close to the mat and gives other people these benefits? So I became a personal trainer. And again, that happened also serendipitously. Someone introduced me to a guy that worked at this boutique gym in the West Village, and the rest is history. I mean, it's just from there to then starting my own practice. The first real client I had, actually, private client in the gym, she lived directly across from the World Trade Center.
Oh, wow.
So she was out of her apartment. So she was down at one of these fancy hotels, living in a fancy hotel. So she eventually asked me to train her there. And then all of a sudden, I'm surrounded by all these very wealthy people that wanted me as their trainer. And then my practice just grew organically.
Yeah.
Yet every day, I was also at the dojo. So I was learning, training, teaching classes. And it was just a huge part of my life.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. It's funny. In my research prepping for this episode, I saw an interview that you did with Shaun T, who I absolutely love. I am just so in love with him. He has helped me so much over the years. I just want to give him a little shout out because he's like a connection. Literally, I did hit the insanity workouts when I had like CD entry, like, the DVD slot in my computer. And I did them early mornings in Finland, of all places, where I was like traveling for skydiving coaching. And I'm like, I always eat like crap and I never work out when I'm traveling. And anyway, I just love him dearly. And I've, of course, he's a wonderful human and just shares himself so bravely and vulnerably.
He really is.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yeah.
It's all authentic. Yeah. I wound up on a reality TV show with Shaun. He was the host. So that's my connection to him.
I love it.
Yeah. He's been here to my house. Like, he's a really wonderful human being.
Yeah.
Inside and out.
Inside and out. Yeah. And you can know that when you listen to somebody on a podcast where they're really sharing their own actual stories and stuff like that. One of the things that's so cool about you is that I think this is true about anybody who ends up in a public facing leadership role, is that you are just a person who had life experiences and then stepped into things along the path, trusting that intuition like we talked about, but then really looking for how can I translate this into service and being willing to be seen. How many stages have you been on? Hundreds. You know what I mean? And so like, how did you get to the point and about creating your content and your keynote? And because I do want to talk a little bit more about those pragmatic bullet points that you share with the white belt and the belts that you talk about, if you don't mind, because I feel like people will get so much value from hearing that, but also in your process to become that person who was willing to do it, and then confident at like building and growing into your confidence to do it as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'd have to scroll back
do it
to when the seeds were planted, really, because for me, I always say I'm like a late bloomer, or things just took me longer than I feel like it does for younger people today. I don't know. Again, I look back to I'm growing this business of mine from personal training to health coaching, back to school for nutrition, and there's no internet. There's no social media back then, right?
Yep.
As you know, so you can't just share everything that you're doing in every minute. You can't share about your business. You can't invite people into your coaching practice online. It was literally word of mouth. People seeing you in person doing your job and saying like, oh, I want some of that. So anyway, during there's about 10 years from 9/11 to leaving for Los Angeles, I just dove deep into personal development. So again, I'm sure your audience I can speak about all this stuff with.
Oh, yes.
But I did the Landmark Forum. I was supposed to be in the World Trade Center on September 14th, 2001, doing it.
Oh,
that
wow.
weekend.
Wow. I've done the full Landmark curriculum as well. So I'm a fan. People can take it or leave it, and how they try to enroll people in being a part of it. But I position it as it is a powerful skill set for communication and self-awareness, and it's useful. So I liked it. I loved it. I'm very grateful.
Same.
If people want to do it, cool. If they don't want to do it, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started that, and then Tony Robbins, because again, planted the seed from when I was a kid listening to him. So I went to his Unleash the Power Within, and kind of like, I remember being almost like mesmerized to like stand up and go sign up for like the full program.
It's like, nice job, Tony. It's working.
Totally. I'm 25 years old. I don't have a dime to my name, but here's $10,000 on my credit card to sign up for this, huge 3-session thing. Anyway, I did it, and I don't regret a penny of it. I always figured it out how to pay for it. So anyway, I just remember being in one of his seminars and looking up and thinking, if I could do a sliver of that, if I could have a sliver of that impact on folks, that would be a very worthwhile career. And I was hooked. So again, from that moment to actually getting on my first stage was probably 10 years.
Wow, cool. But I love that. Again, thank you for sharing the seed planting idea and normalizing that it takes time for those seeds to be nurtured, to grow. We might not be ready for an idea when it is first introduced to us, but to have some sense that we can trust that, okay, I might not be able to receive that now, but I know it's somewhere in me percolating if it's meant to.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I one of my faults is comparison. So I compare myself to other people and like, why am I not further along than I am? And so a younger woman comes to me a couple of weeks ago and is like, so I just landed this gig on stage. I didn't even try. And can you help me, And then once she's done, she's like, oh my God, I'm hooked. I want to do this. And I was like, wow.
You're like, God damn it. Why did they call me?
Like I feel like I've hustled for every gig that I've had. So anyway, but that's just, again, out there for you folks to laugh. Just laugh at the whole, we compare ourselves to everyone.
Totally.
Anyway, so that's how long it took. And so I knew I wanted to do public speaking, and I figured, well, what's the next logical step? How do I take that first easy move? So self-defense was something that I was teaching around town here. At this point, I'm in Los Angeles. So I figured, well, college women is a great audience. So I started pitching my talks to colleges around, but I soon realized that there's a whole college speaking circuit.
Okay.
Where, sororities, they have money to spend and they bring in speakers. So instead of positioning myself as a, self-defense instructor and showing up in sneakers and a tank top, I positioned myself as a speaker on sexual assault prevention or awareness and safety expert.
Nice.
And put on a blazer and a pair of heels. And I made a PowerPoint, and all of a sudden I was able to reach more people.
Yeah.
And charge a lot more for, what it actually is valued at. It's not just $100 thing or a few $100s. It's, could potentially save people's lives. So I had to step into it. I had to align with that energy. As well as on the outside, make it show that way as well. That makes sense.
Yeah, totally. For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting part of, the healing journey and the growth process is that awareness of the part of the process that is, dang, my external results are not what I am working toward. What I'm doing isn't delivering what I think it should. So clearly I'm missing something. There must be something in my blind spot, or there must be something that I am aware of that I have to be really honest with myself, uncomfortably honest with myself. Okay, you know what? I've been charging $100 or whatever because that's where I was at energetically. That's what I thought I maybe deserved or whatever. Or I just had never experienced getting paid X thousands of dollars for an appearance, right? And so it makes sense that there would be some kind of bridge that needs to happen between that experience and something else, unless you're someone who has a weird 23-year-old experience and gets a speaking gig out of nowhere, doesn't even try. But that's not typical. You know what I mean? That's not typical. The hustle and I have to kind of work and learn how to align my energy is more what I see, right?
Yeah. You have to level up to even request that kind of dollars or the stage time or the resources that it takes to bring you somewhere.
Totally. And owning the energy, embodying that energy is a clear part of how people who have the authority to deploy the resources will trust you. And so it's a really important part of it, because you can have the best PowerPoint in the world. You can wear the heels and the blazer, but if you're not actually embodying the energy, it's not likely to happen.
Okay, so this is just like spilling out of my brain.
Do it.
You had asked how did that happen, or how did the confidence part of doing that? And my third eye just keeps showing me stepping onto the mat. So when you step onto the mat in martial arts, the first thing you do, first of all, is bow, which is just symbolic for okay, I'm entering a sacred place, right? Where we do the work is sacred. There's no, and again, in a martial arts studio is very different than MMA school or a gym or wherever. There's just more mindfulness, discernment, and intention behind it. So you're not on the mat. First of all, no shoes, you're in a uniform. It would be very weird for you to be, at least in the school I was trained in, you wouldn't go in on the mat in street clothes. Right? You would only have to be in a uniform. You're barefoot. You're not drinking water. That's the thing that you'd have to leave the mat, and you leave the mat and bow again. So anytime you enter or leave the mat, you have to bow, go get your water, go to the bathroom, and then come back and bow again. So it's very formal. And then once you get on there, anytime you start, whether you're going to start a class or a kata or something, you get into a ready position. And that's, I know most people can't see it, but it's legs are spread wider than hip width apart. You're very, your posture is perfect, chest out, your hands are in front of you in fists. It's just so powerful. And the mindset that I had, that's drilled into my head. It's the minute I step on that mat, I'm powerful in my mind, my body, my spirit. So I feel like every time I step on stage, I'm trying to embody that person, energy again.
I love that. It's sort of like how I feel climbing out of an aircraft in flight. What is my presence in the door? What is my energy in the door of an aircraft that I'm about to exit from, right? How do I own that space and deliberately make that choice? And of course, in the process, can control my physiology with intention, with mindfulness, with breath. Love it. I love it. There's so many parallels in our story, Jen. I just love it so much.
Sure there is. Yeah, you have to be so mindful up there. Every little movement and breath and everything, I'm sure.
Well, so let's go to the belts, because I do want people to hear that from you, that content that you take people through, because I do think sometimes easily consumable insights. You never know what a person listening, they might, and I'm going to just tell them the first one, that embrace the suck,
Yeah.
I want to start with that, the white belt, embrace the suck. But like, you don't know which one's going to land for people and help them, and what seeds will be planted, as we just said, for other stuff that they might need in the future. So go for it and give us a little bit of a sense for at least the first belt, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So everything, I use the metaphor in the beginning of the chapter, the metaphor of being on the mat in martial arts, and at white belt level, there's a lot of suck to embrace because, again, you're putting on these uniforms, you're bowing to everyone that's a higher rank than you. So that's basically everyone. There's just all these uncomfortable, weird things. Then you're stepping onto the mat, and all of a sudden you're paired with people, and they're going to be punching at you, kicking at you, putting you in arm locks.
Right.
This is very uncomfortable.
And you don't know how to really do it yet.
Exactly. You have no clue. You're just kind of learning by being there. So I feel like that's life in so many different situations, whether it be starting a new job, whether it be getting into a relationship, dating for the first time, like all of it, it's new.
Yeah.
The first time you do it, right?
Totally.
And it's going to be hard, and that's okay. So the whole point of embrace the suck is to embrace it, knowing that no one gets out of this life without going through challenges. They may be hidden from public view, but everybody has been challenged to their core.
Yep.
And if they haven't yet, then I hate to say it, but they will. It's just life cycles. We lose our parents. And this is the thing. If you're blessed enough to live a long, healthy life, and the cycles of work where your parents die in front of you, like all of that happens, these are going to be things that completely suck, but everyone is going to go through them.
Yep.
And then obviously there are people that have had major stuff, like born into suck.
Yeah.
So it's just a way to get everyone present to like, you may have it bad, but there's always people that probably have it worse than you. So I know, again, it goes back to comparing yourself to other people's lives, but I still do think that's an important piece of just remembering that. And also, there are different exercises in the chapter on really how to go deeper into embracing it. Remembering all the I call it your shits list, like remembering all the things. And you don't have to be great. I'm not so where you have to be grateful for those things happening to you. I don't believe in that necessarily, but I believe in thanking and acknowledging yourself for getting through them, and just saying like, hey, good job. You're here, you're still standing, you're alive, you did it.
Yeah.
And let's move on and not keep that in our present. Like, let's keep it in the past.
Totally. I hear that, and I hear it as a mental, emotional skill that will help make the sucky times that are a guarantee easier to get through. It will be more efficient moving through them, most likely, because when you are not spending energy in resistance to what is, in resistance to what's true, in resistance to the reality that you are facing, it allows us to have more energy to do something else, to do something that might move us forward. It's just less heavy when we are like, oh, this is part of it. I'm not a loser because this is happening to me. I'm not failing at life because this is happening. This is part of it. I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's okay. And it's a season, right?
It's a season.
It's likely a season of suck. It's not going to last forever.
A season of suck. I love that. Yeah. I'm in a season of suck, my friends, but it's okay. It's all part of it.
Yeah.
So yellow belt's next, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yellow belt is for how to bounce back.
Okay.
Right. Again, on the mat metaphor is either we try to avoid a takedown altogether by pivoting, or when we do get knocked down, we have options. We train in mat work, it's called, and mat work is just drilling over and over again, falling down and getting up in different ways.
Wow, cool.
So front falling, back falling, side falling, all those things. And you do it hundreds and thousands of times. So it becomes easier. You get back up with more velocity and ease each time.
Got it.
And again, like life, right? So there are the three options in the chapter is if you are in the suck right now, can you pivot? Maybe not. Can you roll with the punches? And then there are obviously ways how to do that. My biggest one I just want to point out is finding support, right? Reaching out, sharing what you're going through with people so you can find the right answers and solutions and people in your life.
Yep.
And then the last is sometimes all of that isn't possible. And the only thing that we can do is recreate ourselves and make an ultimate comeback, right? When we're completely knocked out. That's like you lose your job, you lose a relationship, someone dies. You cannot, there's no option to pivot or roll.
Yeah.
You just have to recreate.
Those irrevocable mushroom cloud moments in life. Yeah, totally. I love the call out to the support system. And again, that's a large part of what we're doing with the Trust the Journey family. Like, how do we create community? How do we, again, there's all this talk about integration of our healing insights and all the things that we get from the deep healing work that we do. Well, what is that? Okay, what's an insight if I'm not integrating it, if I'm not being held accountable, if I'm not, again, what do I do as a life coach? I'm a part of, you do as a coach, right? You're a part of people's support team. You know, I keep positioning it personally now as being on someone's personal board of directors, because the way that I work is more personal. Like, I talk to people about business, of course. I have all those skills, but it's the vast majority of things that I do it's in the realm of personal, because we're going deep. We're talking about healing, yada, 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 and like inviting people into that because they have spent the vast majority of their life doing the business and the, type A achievement thing, which is great too. Right? There's nothing wrong with it. It's more just like, okay, if you want to do more, we got to go, like down here and see what we find with a flashlight.
I'm in my late 40s. Oh gosh.
I'm 45.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
I'm turning 47 in 2 weeks. But I just can't believe. But at the same time, I keep running into people in this age range-ish, little younger, little older, that are in that space right now. It's like they've achieved, and they're like, now what?
Yeah.
And either they, were laid off and can't find another job, or just needing to make a change, or like giving it all up to start something new. It's an interesting time.
Yeah. Are you still fulfilled by your work? Do you love your work? Like, what do you get from it?
Oh, yes, and yes.
Yeah, cool, amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel super fulfilled. I'm just at a point where I'm like, okay, more, please. I love doing in-person speaking gigs. I feel like when I'm on stage or in front of a group, I'm just pouring into folks, and which is funny because at the end, I might feel a little tired that evening or that night, but it's not drained or exhausted.
Yeah.
It's a satisfied, fulfilled, like a sigh almost.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's why I know I'm doing what I love still.
That's how I feel after these interviews. That's why I'm like, oh, just like my soul is being fueled by just being with you. You know what I mean? It's very real for me. Thank you. I know. I do want to keep going with the belts, just because I want to make sure we cover them all, even if just briefly. You certainly don't need to give your whole book. Peeps listening, of course, get Jen's book. It's amazing. It's on Audible too. Go for it. So the next one,
orange belt. Exactly.
Yeah,
yes. You're good. I was like, does she have notes in front of her?
I don't. No. I did my research, but I'm like, I don't have notes because I like to be really present in the moment. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Orange belt is about setting boundaries. So again, on the mat, you're now really drilling your blocking skills, because if you don't, you're going to get punched in the face too many times, and that hurts.
Ow.
Yeah. Like, I just thought this chapter was really important, especially for younger women, but not even just younger women. I have a client right now in her 50s who just does not have a good practice of setting boundaries in her life with people, places, and things, right?
Yep.
People, places, and things that are draining you of your power or distracting you from your purpose. Those are the things we need to block. In the chapter, it might come across a little harsh because I give like, there's hard blocks and soft blocks. And the hard blocks is like really sometimes telling people like to back off or get out of here, don't do that again, or no. Right? Just saying no in a powerful way. Yeah. So
I love that. Yeah, it's funny. One of my deep experiences, we talk a lot about psychedelic medicine and healing and with plant medicines on this show. And one of my early experiences with ayahuasca was like basically purging every time I was silent, every time I didn't stand up for myself, didn't speak up for myself, the little girl that didn't know how, didn't know she could. And then what followed that purge was my voice. I said no with authority, with power for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, just over and over and over again, accessing that experience so that it was then available to me now in my normal sort of waking, I'm healing, I'm integrating life. So I think that's a really important one because it can be really hard for women, for any person who kind of identifies as maybe a people pleaser or fear of conflict or whatever, to really feel like it's okay to step into that power and to have no be a complete sentence.
Yeah. Again, the work that I've been in for the 2 decades now, I've had way too many women share either through social media, to like direct messages, comments, and coming up to me personally and telling me their stories of abuse, manipulation, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional, spiritual, all kinds of abuse. I don't want it to happen on my watch anymore. So that's why I make women say no in my seminars. I make them scream. I make them shout. Like, let's really tap into this very powerful weapon that we have, which is our voice.
Yes. God, I love that. My skin is tingling thinking of that. It's beautiful. Why are you so inspired? I mean, I genuinely don't know. Why are you so inspired to focus on women specifically?
Well, what's coming up for me, and again, I don't share this ever, but I just remember being in college and getting a phone call from someone I love probably more than anything in the world. And she told me, she just vomited on me, telling me a story of how she was sexually abused as a child.
Wow.
And I don't know if this is why I do what I do. But when you pair that and then my dad doing martial arts and then I don't know, it all, I feel that these, again, were just seeds that were planted that I just want to stick up. I don't want that to happen to anyone I love or care about or even know, or anyone out there listening. It makes me so angry. It makes me heated. It makes me like, no effing way is someone out there going to take advantage of a little girl,
right,
or boy, or anyone, or young person, young, adult, or old person, anyone. It just drives me crazy. I get very fired up. So
I love it. Well, that's, and again, to your point, we don't necessarily need to know why. I love that you followed and honored that, okay, this is coming up. Because how many people have a story like that they haven't shared in a safe space, that they don't have a safe space, or they haven't felt like they could share it with anyone, even if they do have a safe space available to them. So kudos, amazing to your friend for trusting you, for kudos to you for being a person that she felt safe enough to share that with then. And also it makes sense that a story as powerful as that, and at as young of an age as you were then, that it would make an impact, and certainly anger you in the face of injustice. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. So there's why I continue to do the self-defense or keep using the dojo metaphors is because I do feel it's so empowering, the wisdom that I've learned on that mat, more so than the master's degree in nutrition, all this stuff. Like no shade to
right, no shade.
No shade. But it's like, is the Krebs cycle really helping me out in my career right now? No.
Right.
Is getting onto that mat and shouting and sticking up for myself and becoming a teacher and a leader? Yes.
Right.
Let me share more of that.
I love it. All right, I'm going to guess the next color. I think it's blue. Or is there green? I'm like, is there a green belt? I couldn't remember. Green belt.
It's all good. And essentially it's the key up. It's the voice. It's exactly what we're talking about.
There you go.
It blends right from setting boundaries and now using your voice in a powerful way.
Oh God, I love that. Okay, perfect. We've already talked about green belt. Copy that.
Exactly.
So then the next one is blue belt.
Correct. Okay. Which is about learning about chi and your life force energy. And essentially it's about self-care. So when you're on a mission in life and you're, running around, and God knows our to-do lists are bonkers long these days. And, if you don't take care of yourself first, if you don't fill your cup first with self-care and all the things, hydration, nutrition, movement, sleep, we're all just heading for burnout. Yeah. And then what's the point of it all?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good spiritual question, is like, what is it all for? It is an interesting question. We don't need to dive into that question at the moment, because I know we want to eventually close this interview, which, we could continue for a long time. But yeah, I think it is an interesting question. And I think what's cool about Blue Belt is, again, an acknowledgement that life force, life energy is a thing worthy of our attention, right? Because it's, like you said, self-care, but that implies that we are not prioritizing our life force, our energy, our chi, whatever that means to people. And so I love...
Well, here in the States, we don't even acknowledge it exists. Yeah. There's no word for it.
That's exactly right.
I'm starting to learn about chi. I'm like, really? For the first time as an adult, this is when I'm learning about this?
Exactly. Don't get me started on the American education system.
Or healthcare, for that matter.
Or healthcare, or lots of other stuff. So put a pin in that, but I think peeps listening, sure, write me a message if you want. I'll happily share my thoughts.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, energy. And I think another thing, just before we move on to the last belt, is that energy, life force is something, I think, and I would be curious your reflection on this based on what I'm about to say. Yes, it is individual. It is something we think about in self-care. I also really think it's a huge part of community and selecting who gets access to us. What is our life force? I know that's sort of probably connected to Orange Belt and boundaries and stuff, but I imagine there's a blending of these belts, and you see it once you know and have access to all the knowledge and insight from them. Yep. But that's a big deal. Who gets access to us? Who am I choosing to spend my time with and be influenced by?
Absolutely. Great point.
Yeah. Okay. Last belt. Yeah. Fill us in.
2 more.
Oh, 2 more. What's the other one?
Yeah. Well, so red belt quickly.
Oh, red belt.
About...
See, that I love that. See, I definitely don't have notes. I completely forgot red belt.
That's okay. I don't expect you to memorize it. It's all about going within. So at that point in my martial arts journey anyway, we started to learn these slower forms, again, like using your chi and beautiful. We started to do more meditation, so deepen our meditation practice. And again, the life part of that is, if we don't slow down, again, we're just going to spin off into space and burn out.
So true.
This is about deepening, being mindful. Again, exactly what you were saying, being mindful about how you spend your time, who you spend your energy with, listening more, listening to yourself, listening to that inner voice to eventually will speed you up. You will become more efficient. You will become more efficient because you'll make less mistakes when you're more mindful. You'll see a punch coming before it has a chance to land, metaphorically. So yeah, that's red belt.
Yeah, I love that.
And then we have black belt.
Yeah. Well, quickly, I mean, if you have another couple minutes, I would love to just...
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the red belt of going within, I think one of the most powerful skills we can build is at this level, personally, I think. And it shows up so obviously in your story when you had that intuitive hit and you trusted it and you leaned into it. I'm sure there's countless other stories in your existence that point to this. But that, I love positioning things as skills because I feel like it makes it accessible. I'm not just someone who's good and intuitively connected. Maybe, fine. I don't understand how humans are and spiritual and soul and all this stuff is put together. I have great humility around my human understanding of what life actually is. So that being said, I do think it's a skill that we can cultivate. Like I can decide to be intentional about, I want to build a better relationship and try to improve my ability to discern what is my intuition versus what is fear. And that is just something that we can bring to the safe space. We can bring to the coach that we hire. We can bring to our community that's supporting us and really make that a thing. So anyway, I digress.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's really it's probably my favorite belt. And I feel like I could have went much deeper into it, but that'll be the next book. Because it's become such a bigger part of my life the older I get.
Yeah.
The more dedicated I am to my meditation practice, the deeper I go, the deeper I want to go, the longer I want to sit, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. All right, black belt.
Okay. So at black belt level, right, and on the mat, as you're coming up, first of all, in my school, so this is not every school out there, but we weren't even allowed to be an applicant for a black belt test because you have to test. You don't just get it.
Right.
Until we had at least 100 hours of teaching.
Wow.
Right? Not paid. So volunteerism. And so again, you think it's about the moves that you have to learn, the katas that you have to memorize. But at the end of the day, what I finally understood was it's actually about leadership. It's about becoming this leader in the microcosm of the dojo. And then how, I started to see how those leadership principles leaked out into other areas of my life. And still to this day, even though that dojo is far from me, physically anyway. Yeah. It's implanted all these seeds. So, being a leader that helps other people rise up through the ranks as well. That's it in a nutshell.
Yep.
How can you do that in your life? How can you help other people rise? How can you give a shit about other people at work, at home, and not just the ones under your roof? And this is one thing that I've seen. And again, I'm not a parent, so I'm saying this carefully, but I see so many people care about their daughters or their, but what about others? What about girls that don't have that, what's the word? The luck of being born into, a family that cares about you.
Right.
There's just so many other things that we can care about as well, right? Of course, you want to care about your family first, but let's expand that circle as we grow as possible.
Yeah, totally. It's like, how are we being in service? How are we connecting to what's beyond ourselves? Because not just to be like, I want to hold your feet to the fire, peeps listening. You got to do more than XYZ, right? Like, that's not what you're saying. You're saying like, there's also deep fulfillment and joy and gratitude and happiness when we get out of our self-centered. And I say that not with judgment, like our self-focus. I can be plenty self-focused, right? We all have stresses. We all have fear. We all have, whatever.
Yeah.
But there is something to that that helps us access. The last interview that I did it with a guy named Carlos Tanner, really great, insightful dude. And he was talking about the research they're doing around healing and this and that. Anyway, I don't need to go into it, but I'm pointing to it is he said we measure in these studies the impact of healing up to I no longer feel depressed or I feel less anxious. I'm at a 0 relative to anxiety or PTSD or whatever. But there are no studies currently, not really, limited studies that measure, but what is it to get to 50, 60, 70, whatever, in joy and fulfillment and happiness, right? That's not something people care about because it's mostly centered around how do I get to a just baseline functional place. So anyway, I think Black Belt is a part of that.
Wow. Absolutely it is because, it's about purpose, finding purpose. And many people find purpose in helping other people, sure, but also other things. If your thing is the planet, then go and help the planet.
Yeah.
There are so many other causes, just basically anything bigger than yourself, right? And it is about, we are so tunnel focused so often, but the minute that you step outside, and I do it too, right? So this is not like, oh, I'm a black belt, I don't do this anymore.
Right.
But it's a reminder that, for my biggest example is when I get stressed about finances, the first thing that I will try and do is go, oh, I love this charity that helps cats in LA.
Yes.
Like I adopted my cats from there. So I'll go and just like donate $25. And all of a sudden I'm like, I have the ability to help people. Wow.
Yeah.
That, or animals, anything.
Yeah.
Give $20. Give your time. Give a compliment. It could be free. Anything and it will fill your spirit, fill your cup up so much that you'll just be overflowing with utter badassery.
Oh, so true. And I'm just going to say, I love that you're a cat lover. As everyone knows, I'm a cat lover. So perfect place to sort of go toward the close. But what are you working on now that you're psyched about? Because we want to hear all the ways that people can connect with you and how can they get your book and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But first tell us, like, what are you working on now? Where are you going? What's next for you? What are you excited about? Just give us a window into that and then tell us how people can connect with you.
Yes. Awesome. I mean, more of the same. Like I said, I love public speaking, so I'm just working on doing more of that. I'm working on getting the Art of Badassery into a digital course format.
Cool.
So people can go a little deeper. People that can't necessarily afford to work with me one-on-one can still do it in a deeper format.
Love it.
I have the podcast that I just launched, the Art of Badassery podcast, which Melanie's going to be a guest on in season 2. And, there's another book. I feel like I just have to do one creative project at a time.
Yeah.
So I have 2 more creative projects I need to get to before the book starts.
Yep. So, I totally get that. Yeah, but it's cool that, we know when it's time has come, we know it. Like if you're a creative long enough, this is my experience being a creative, being a prolific creator, writer, podcaster, like yada, all that stuff. I feel like I'm with you where I'm like, I have no joke, Jen. I have a book that at some point I am going to publish a book of my haikus because I love writing haikus. I've written them for years and years. They're hilarious. They're deep and meaningful. They're fucking awesome. And eventually that book is going to be in the world. Mm-hmm. I don't need anyone to buy it, but eventually I know it's going to want to, its time will come eventually. It might be 10 years from now. It doesn't really matter, but it's like that's sort of what I feel like you're describing is, sometimes it's centered around our work and our impact. Other times it's some creative thing. Anyway, I love that you have a new show. I love that your voice is getting out there more. I love that you joined us in this space. Thank you for being so generous with the stories that you told and the sharing and the things that you gave us that you don't normally share with other, outlets or whatever. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. Like, I see you. You're amazing. I'm so grateful we're connected. And how can people connect with you? What's your website? Because I want people to make sure they go there.
Sure. JenniferCassetta.com, 2 N's, 2 S's, 2 T's. And the social media that I'm most active on is Instagram. And that would be, again, Jen Cassetta, 2 N's, 2 S's, 2 T's.
I love that too. 2 N's, 2 S's, 2 T's. That's so useful. I love that. Jen, amazing.
Thank you, Melanie.
Peeps, go follow Jen. Go check out her stuff. You will be inspired. I challenge you not to be when you go and check out her stuff. And onward from here, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.